Reinvented, Redefining the Impact of Life Storms, we have a unique episode. And I call it unique because I will not be sitting in the hostess seat. I am giving that seat over to my goddaughter, Reinvented. And she's going to talk to me about my incident of domestic violence. I haven't spoken about my particular story, and only those that are most closest to me know the details, and even they don't know the whole story. But I've chosen to speak out now because as it's on the rise, I'm finding that more and more women are suffering from domestic violence. And not only women, but 1 out of 9 men are now experiencing it as well. So today, I tell my story, and I want you to welcome my co-host, Reinvented. Reinvented, thank you so much for agreeing to do this, to allow me to be able to share my story with those who may be experiencing domestic violence or may have survived it themselves. It's extremely important that we raise awareness, not only in October, but year-round. So thank you so much for allowing me to sit in this seat and for you to ask me questions.
Well, it's an honor, and thank you for having me. So we're going to hear about your story today, so go ahead and tell us a little bit about your story.
Well, I actually met my abuser back in 1990, I think it was. It's been so long ago. Well, that's when we actually got married, so I met him a long time ago. When I met him, he was in church, and I was in church and everything, so I thought he was an amazing person to be in relationship with. I had some issues of my own that a lot of times that we do have as women when we attract certain personality types, and I think that's kind of one of the reasons why I ended up with him. So I had met him back in church, and we began to date, and I, at that point in time, was a little older, so I was definitely looking for marriage and was excited about having someone to meet that was also interested in being married too. So we ended up getting married, and then shortly after we got married, about 2 weeks into the relationship, I started to experience domestic violence, physical, mental, emotional, and verbal.
2 weeks?
2 weeks.
With you being with someone that was in church, were there any signs before that this would be the case?
Great question. And I got that all the time. It was actually one of the reasons why I felt ashamed being with someone like that, because there were signs. There's always some signs, but a lot of times we do kind of overlook them because a lot of times they blur with healthy relationship issues. Like, for example, it's actually normal to have disagreements. You and your partner are not going to agree all the time. So there is healthy times when you might have disagreements, but then there's also times when it's unhealthy. And so sometimes those red flags don't, just immediately jump out to people, but we need to pay attention to them and really make sure we look to see if it is something that we need to stop and pause before we get into some situations. So to answer your question, yeah, when I look back on it, there were red flags. But one of the reasons why I didn't really pay much attention to that red flag, the one that he was extremely jealous, is because at that point in time in my life, I was looking for somebody to really care about me and to be concerned about my safety. And that was one of the things that he did. I thought he was really concerned about my safety, but at that point in time, really, it was a red flag about him being controlling. Yeah.
What are some subtle red flags that people can pay attention to, especially the younger generation? I know they may have no clue, as we did not when we were younger. If you're a little bit older, you've lived a little, but a younger generation, besides jealousy, what are some other maybe subtle things that one can watch for to see maybe that is something that can turn into something else later on?
I think the greatest advice I would give to the younger generation is take time to actually watch before you invest your emotions. Because when we start investing our emotions or buying into the dream, the idea of relationship, partnership, and marriage, that's when our filter gets cloudy. and we overlook those things. We're not really seeing it as it should be seen. So if you are dating someone, look at how they treat their mom. Look at the relationships they have with their family members. How many times have they been married, divorced, in relationships? What kind of father are they? You know, if they have those situations going on. But a lot of times, just sit back and observe, how do they treat other women? Do they show them a lot of respect, and is it consistent? You know, take that person around other family members who genuinely care about you and friends that genuinely care about you, and get their opinion. You know, because a lot of times that will help with that filter that we build up. Correct. You might not want to hear it. They might tell you, because my aunt tried to tell me. She tried to tell me, something is not right about him. I don't like him, and you don't need to get married. And I just brushed it off as, oh, you just, whatever, you know. No, auntie, you must not want me, you know, to be happy or whatever. And I dismissed it. But she was dead on it. There was something very wrong about him. And if I had listened to her back then, I probably would not have gone through this situation. I would not have gone through the situation because I would not have been with him. She specifically told me he was not good for me.
To that point, we don't listen.
No.
We can tell people, watch for this, watch for that, and they may still not listen, because we do build up a cloud and we make it what we want it to be. So in that, you're 2 weeks into the marriage, you start to see things happening. What are some ways to get out of it when you have not listened and now you're in this? What happened next, and how did you handle that?
Well, for me, what happened next, I ended up going through it for 5 years. And it was the worst 5 years that I had ever experienced. And I said 1990, but it was actually 1999. Okay. It was the worst 5 years of my life. One, I was shocked to have been in a situation in that the very person who said he loved me enough to stand at an altar before God and make that commitment to me was also the same person that was terrifying me and terrorizing me in my own home. So it was extremely confusing. And the things that he mentioned that he would do to me and to my sons, or let my sons witness, he used that as a way to control me about speaking out and getting away. So for me, just having the shock of it, I didn't see my dad be abusive to my mom. So this was my first time experiencing somebody that to me was so evil that he wanted to kill me, you know. And so it put me into a state of numbness, I would say, shock. I couldn't believe that I was actually with somebody that was doing this, and I didn't know at that point in time how to get out.
So you came from a background with no domestic violence in your home. And so it was shocking. So what did you do in your numbness? I'm sure you kind of turned off the family, didn't let them know things.
Absolutely, I kept it. My dad asked my mom, was something going on, because he perceived that something was going on. And when my mom told me about the conversation my dad had with her, and I can say it now, he's gone, but he basically said, if he's putting his hands on Carla, I can go to jail, you know, and I knew my dad would do that for me because I knew he loved me that much. And so I didn't want to tell, because I didn't want him to have to pay for the bad choice I made. That's the way I perceived it. I made this bad choice of marrying this person, so why should anybody I love lose their life or have to go to jail for trying to get me out or to protect me? A lot of the homicides and the physical abuse that happens to the real strong violence that happens, it happens to those that also intervene. And I knew that. You know, and I just didn't want my dad to have to come to my rescue like that. So I stayed in it, just trying to pacify him and trying to survive the situation.
Did the boys see a lot of stuff, or was it kind of hidden from them?
I thought I hid it from them, but as they grew up, later on, they mentioned that there were certain things that he would do, even to my oldest son, that I didn't realize was going on, that they knew something wasn't right about him. The whole house was just off, you know, because it just wasn't a house of love. It was a house of, for lack of better words, I would call it a house of horrors, because he was just ugly in every way. You could not, you really couldn't even live in the house. You had to stay out of certain rooms, certain things you could not touch. They were his things. The boys had to stay up in their room the majority of the time, or they would have to, you know, go away and be at their grandma's house or something like that. But he was just extremely controlling over his possessions and everything. And it just was not a healthy environment.
With you being numb and in shock, is that why you didn't say, oh no, he's done this, it's only been 2 weeks, I'm out of here? Because you really did not know what to do, or you just were kind of just couldn't believe it happened, and then the day went on, and another day went on, and another day went on?
It's a lot. When you're in a situation like that, it's a lot. It's not just the shock that it just happened to you, but where are you going to go? You have the embarrassment and the humiliation of the situation, because unfortunately, society is just not full of compassion for survivors. Right. You know, they're not. A lot of people, you'll hear them say it all the time, and I have to admit, back in the day, I've said it myself. You know, why did you stay? You stupid for not leaving. I wouldn't let a man hit on me or do that. But until you're in that situation, right. You should never say never. That's right. You know, because, because a lot of them, I call them being skillfully masterminding in their art of evil.
Did you ever think about trying to get him help?
So we did actually go to counseling to try to save the marriage, because I was in love with the idea of marriage more than I was with him. Okay. Because I knew he was not healthy for me. I mean, how could you be? I did have enough common sense to know that if you're hitting me, kicking me, choking me, you know, being controlling, excessively jealous, if you're doing all those type of things, there's no way you could have a healthy love for me. Even though he said it all the time, there's no way you could. So I had enough sense to know that that wasn't healthy love. So I wasn't in love with the man. I didn't see him as somebody who loved me, but I was in love with the idea of marriage and covenant and relationship. And I think that was the thing that I had to let go of the most in order to really accept my reality that this is not a healthy marriage, this is not a healthy man, this is not a healthy situation that I'm in, and I will be okay if I let that go. I had to bring myself to that place in my own mind. And it takes a lot, because a lot of times you have to understand abusers, I call it, they worm their way in. Yeah. There's something that you can look up. It's called the cycle of abuse. They love bomb you first. And that's purposeful, to get you to think that they're wonderful or that they're nice. My then husband, my abuser, he went to church every Sunday. You know, I sat right next to him, hands lifted high, you know, had this great image that, you know, he was this wonderful guy in the church and everything, but would absolutely terrorize me at home. I mean, threatening to kill me at home. We went to counseling, and we went for marriage counseling. He would refuse to acknowledge that anything was wrong with him. Okay. Everything was me, and that's typical what an abuser does. They usually blame you for everything. You know, nothing is their fault. You caused them to be angry. You caused them to feel the way that they're feeling. You caused them a certain loss, and they take that out on you.
Man of God.
Man of God. Huh. In church every Sunday, worked every Sunday.
And blamed his actions on you.
Blamed everything on me, to the point that even the last physical altercation when we were separated in the process of divorce, used lies to even defend what he had done then. Yeah.
What happened in the end where you were able to finally get away? Like, what happened in your mind and in your body and your soul that you were able to, like, break free from this?
I got tired. I literally lived in a fight or flight disposition every single day, and I got tired. And I decided it was going to be him or me. Now, I'm not saying that that should be everybody's resolution or their way out, because there are services like Artemis Center that will help you come up with a plan and a path. But I was too ashamed to go to those places, because that would be admitting that I made the mistake of being in a domestic violence situation. And like I said, society is not very welcoming of survivors. They're just not. And so to hide it, I felt like I had to make my own way of escape.
Like, let's say I know someone who's in that situation, but I know from experience in life that people are going to put up with it as long as they want to until they're tired. So when they may reach out, it's like, I hear them, but I know they're going to stay with them. I don't want to get involved because they're going to stay with that person, and then me and this person have an issue, and they're still with that person. So it's an unnecessary friction for me as someone on the outside. How will I know, like, this time she's reaching out, she's really tired, she really wants help, and really try to sincerely help? Because I feel like sometimes when you know that people are going through the situations, people just kind of, they stand back because it's like, I know that she's still going to be with them. But like you said, sometimes they're scared, they want protection, and if they don't feel that, they know at night they have to go back home to that person. So there's only so much they're going to do. But what's a way you can recognize that someone who is in a situation where they're being abused in any kind of way, that they're tired, and for you to step up and help would help? Or should you try to help every time? Like, is there any type of borders there?
First, you need to understand that sometimes that survivor, and that's what I like to call us, because if we're still living, we're surviving domestic violence. Whether you're in the situation or you're out, you're surviving it. The first thing that you need to understand is that it may not be because that person is just weak and wants to be there as the reason why they keep going back or staying in the situation. They may actually just be terrified of their abuser. When you have somebody saying that I'm going to inject something in the light bulb, and it'll blow it, when you flip the switch, it'll blow the whole house up and nobody will even know how I killed you. You hear that every day. And then you also have them physically assaulting you, physically threatening you to do things to you in front of your own children. That plays a role on your mind. It takes you to a different place. And so these people, some of them are in situations like that. Some do actually love, but some of them are really trying to survive. It is sometimes about just pacifying the anger so you can live another day. You know your abuser, you know what's going to set him off. And you know that if you leave at that point in time, if it's not the final escape, if he's got any chance of getting back to you or back at you, he's going to take it, and he's going to make it worse than anything that you ever experienced. When I got in my last altercation with the abuser, in my particular situation, I was actually out of the home. He came and stalked me. Okay? He came to my home where I was staying. I hadn't even heard from him for months. But for some reason, he decided he was just going to ride by that night. And he came there, and I was outside, and he physically assaulted me and pulled me by my hair, trying to get me into his car. But I remember they said, if you ever, never let them get you to a second location, because if they do, 9 times out of 10, they plan to kill you. And so I fought that night because I didn't want to die. That was at that point where I had had enough. So you have to understand that some people are dealing with situations like that. It is not that I don't want to get out. I mean, this is serious. This is life or death for me, or life or death for my kids. It's something where I'm already mentally and emotionally beat down, because that's what they do first. They get that control over you first in your mind and in your emotions. so they can control everything else around you. Because it's just like anything in life. When I get you here, I control everything. It's the same thing that they're doing. So usually when they get to that, or sometimes they start out the gate with physical violence to try to get this, that person is already gone. When you already seeing the black eyes and everything, that person is already so wounded on the inside that she's doing everything she can just to survive, not to just fight back. You see what I mean? Does that make sense? So I think when we're trying to help somebody in that situation, that's the first thing we need to understand. We need to get rid of that mindset. Oh, she wants that. No.
I don't feel like it's always a mindset that she wants it. It's just she's not at that point yet where she's ready to make that final escape. And if I intervene, it may be, sometimes if somebody outside intervenes, it's worse on that victim later on. Somebody told me a story about somebody who was being mistreated somewhere public.
I told you that story. The story was, I had gone for lunch or breakfast or something, and there was a car that pulled up with a young woman. This was many years ago, and this man, he was just, I mean, I don't know what was wrong. I was scared of him myself, you know. He was just enraged. I don't know if he was fearing that she was trying to leave or trying to get help or anything like that, but he just went ballistic, went nuts because she got out of the car. And you could see the terror on her face. And having been there, I knew what she was feeling. And I'm looking in disbelief that I'm even seeing it, that he would be doing this so egregiously in public.
Right.
But you could tell he did not care who was watching, who might have stepped in to help, because he knew nobody was. He was arrogant and confident in his ability to abuse her at that moment. You could tell. And he did. And he ordered her back in the car and everything. And so they had called. I found out later that they had actually called the police and everything and gave them the information. But the comments, because what he did is he forced her back in the car and then he slammed the doors and everything and then he drove off real fast. But the comments that they were making afterwards was, she's stupid. All she had to do was come in here, all of us standing in here, you know, we wouldn't have let him do nothing to her, but he was doing something to her in the parking lot. And nobody stepped up, male nor female, you know. But they said they called. I don't know if they did because they were gone before the police could even get here.
And even in that, like, what if somebody did something and she said, oh, it's okay, it's okay.
She's gonna say that. She's gonna say that. You got my abuser's right here. Yeah. He's gonna whoop my tail when I get home.
Right.
I'm not gonna turn on him. No, I'm not. She's gonna say that. And I think that's what we need to understand. She's gonna say that.
So as someone trying to help, what do you do?
I think at that point in time, especially when it's at that violent level, that's when you need to get people that are trained to handle that level of domestic violence. I'm not saying that one is worse than the other or better than the other, easier than the other. I'm not saying that all of it is horrible. Right. If somebody's mentally abusing you, it's the same thing as physical abuse in my book. But when it's starting to be at a point where they may kill you, you know, you need professional intervention, especially in those situations. You need to speak to the Artemis Center. You need to call the police. I know a lot of people say the police don't help, but I mean, hey, what's it gonna hurt? You know, you're already in a bad situation right now where this person can take you out. If they just happen to respond, maybe they'll help. You see what I'm saying? So a person like you, saying you're on the outside watching the situation, you know it could possibly be going on, you can call too. You can call the police, or you can call places like the National Domestic Violence Hotline and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking is going on. In your professional opinion, what should I do? You know, how can I help this person? Because a lot of times they won't help. They're just afraid to get it.
And I think a lot of people who are on the outside feel like when she gets tired, she'll reach out for help when she really, really wants it. But sometimes you're saying mostly they want it while they're there. They just don't have the courage or the strength or the faith that this will be it. When I reach out, I'll get that help. and it'll be over. They feel like it's not, it may not be the last time, and it'll be worse.
Yeah. Well, I mean, well, think about it. It says 1 out of 4 women. And there's how many of us in this room? Exactly.
Right.
But we would have never known it, would we? Because we put the face on,
Right.
you know? And we don't tell it. We don't show it. We don't let people know. You're going to go out of here and you're going to pass by at least 4 women. Statistics say that one of them is going to be abused. Are you going to know it? No. You know why? Because we're hiding it. We're not talking about it, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to come on and share, you know. We need to start talking about it because it's getting worse. Jane said, what, 85 to 95% of it is towards women by men? I mean, it's getting worse.
That was going to be another one of my questions. Do you see it getting worse down the line, down the generations, or do you see it getting any better with more help now, more awareness now?
I think personally awareness is going away because even I, somebody who's sensitive to the issue, I don't see much about it out here. I don't hear people talking about it. I mean, what do you hear? I think coming out of COVID, they began to talk about how domestic violence was on the rise, and they blamed it because we were locked in the house with each other. Right. It's because I'm locked in the house, you get to put my head through a wall? No. No. No.
So you see it getting worse?
I see it getting worse. And my personal opinion, now this is me speaking, I believe because we have a lot of hurting, damaged men that nobody's addressing.
Absolutely.
And because that's not being addressed, they're taking their anger out on us, they're taking their anger out on their children, they're taking their anger out in so many different ways that it keeps escalating. And the reason why you're seeing women now starting to abuse back, where one out of 9 men are being affected by domestic violence, is because they're getting tired of it. They're getting angry. It's a lot going on that's feeding into that. For women, I would say, especially going back to the younger generation, one of the strongest things that we need to do is make sure that we have our own healthy mindset, healthy emotions, healthy esteem, healthy identity, self-love. And the reason why, because I know you already know, is because you're going to attract where you are. And that's what I did, okay? So broken men will come in and break you further. And you're going to attract broken men. But if you have a healthy esteem, healthy values, then you're not going to be so quick to open the door to the wrong man.
Right.
So that's the first thing as women we need to do. You need to work on self. You don't need to be worried about a relationship or anything. If you're in one right now and it's unhealthy and you're not married, if you can get out, go. And go work on yourself.
And try to recognize how you got in that bad one.
Exactly. If you have an unhealthy filter, then unhealthy looks healthy to you.
Somebody once said, don't try to fix yourself when you're looking in a broken mirror, because you can't. Yeah.
You can't, yeah. And so guess what? When you're looking in a broken mirror and brokenness seems good to you, when you see this broken man, they seem fine. They seem fine. And then too, remember, men are not always sharing their brokenness.
Oh, no.
They don't really talk about it. They go through life just doing life, but could be really injured, troubled young men, boys inside.
What do you think about individual counseling along with marriage counseling before marriage?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's part of your health. Yeah, your mental health. Mental health is extremely important.
I think some people don't even realize that they are broken, they are hurt, they have trauma that's affecting them, affects the way they react to things, affects the way they make decisions. And it's, not until it becomes to be a problem, if it is ever even recognized by that person, that it shows up. You know what I mean? Yeah. So do you think that'll be something that could help in the future? Like, what if that was kind of like you had to do individual counseling and then marriage counseling in order to be married? I think that would be something that would
Are you
help.
talking about making it a statement?
I
maybe?
wish it could be,
Yes.
because I think that would be something, because if you're, if you think you're okay, you look at counseling like, nothing's wrong with me, I'm not going to counseling.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've been that way all my life, and now at 42, I'm realizing that,
Yeah.
you can do you can talk to somebody.
Yeah,
There's some stuff,
okay.
and they can pull it out,
Yeah.
you may not recognize it.
Mm-hmm.
They may can help bring it to your memory.
Mm-hmm.
And then you say, oh yeah, that's why I get angry like that when somebody lies. Yeah.
Yeah.
My dad used to lie to me, and
Exactly.
it's why I react the way I react.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For sure. And then things that have happened, you moved on. Like, for example, in this situation, once I got out of the domestic violence situation and divorced, I went back to what people would have thought was life as usual, because I had two little faces still looking at me, needing me to be mom and be everything. But then once they grew up and got out the house, I was left with self. And that's when all of that began to come out. I shared one time before where I would go to work and then put the face on, because I knew I had enough common sense to know it was just me, so I had to make money to take care of myself. But I would come home and get in the bed with my clothes on, especially waiting for a Friday to happen, because I want to do it all weekend long, you know what I mean? I didn't want to be bothering anybody because I was so severely depressed.
Yes.
And at that time, it was taboo to go and talk to somebody. Because if I went and talked to somebody, then to me, I was validating what society said about me being a survivor.
Yeah.
Stupid. It shouldn't have been there in the first place. You're crazy anyway. All the nasty things that we say about each other. To me, that would have brought validation to admit, okay, I need help. And it took years, and it almost cost me my life. I was trying to eat the pain away, sleep the pain away, and indulging in unhealthy behaviors just to pacify what I didn't know what was wrong. And so when I finally did reach out to somebody and say, hey, something is not right, years later, she phoned me, you got PTSD after all what you went through? That's traumatic, what you went through. Somebody telling you they're going to kill you every day, somebody physically beating you and assaulting you, somebody verbally abusing you and degrading you, that's trauma. And it's okay for you to have gone through that. We now need to help you heal.
And what helped you heal with PTSD? Are you healed from it?
I'd say I've made great strides. Some things still trigger me. I cannot stand for a man to get angry around me. When he gets angry, it is kind of a little response that I've had, but I learned to deal with that. I try not to have relationships with men who display a lot of anger, that raise their voice. Some men, that's just how they communicate. They're never going to do anything to you, but that's how they communicate. Not for me. I can't take that. But I'm glad you brought that up, because they actually have something new called I think it's EMDR or EDMR. And it's a type of therapy that they do with the talk therapy and counseling and everything for PTSD. They found that it works extremely well with vets who go overseas and get PTSD. And so now they use it for other traumas, because you don't have to just be in a car accident and lose your leg to have trauma. Trauma comes in many different forms and many different levels. So we actually have started that to desensitize my brain to everything that happened to me.
What does that look like? What is that? I've never heard of that.
Yeah, so I think it's EMDR. You have to forgive me if I'm not saying it right. It's either EMDR or EDMR. But basically, they take you back to the trauma, and you kind of feel it. You could look it up on the internet to get a better description of it, but you feel it, and then they have you work with tones and things. Yeah. And so that helps to desensitize. You've heard of it? Yeah. Yeah, it retrains the brain to not respond that way.
Yeah. Interrupts it.
It interrupts it.
Like they said it's like a record playing. Yeah. They put a scratch on it.
Yeah. Because what people don't understand, when you go through trauma, if they put you under MRI, I think it is, or give you a CAT scan, whatever they do of your head, they can actually see the trauma points where it has affected your brain. So people think, oh, I'm just hurting my emotions, and now I'm just going to get over it and keep. No, you've got some permanent. Yes.
I'm triggered. If it happens like this, I'm triggered.
That's why you fly off the handle. The brain is such a well-refined machine that God created that it was made to operate a certain way. So when it starts operating, when you start messing with it, it's going to respond.
Oh,
Yeah, and that's what trauma does. It gives it a response.
What happened when you got out of it? You said you had moved away. The abuse happened one more time while you weren't in the home. Mm-hmm. So what happened? What happened next? Well, let me back up real quick. Did the way that you were affected, did it affect how you dealt with other people? Like, did it cause you to people? Like when I went through a little bit with my divorce, with what happened with me, with the mistrust and all that, it made me kind of run people off because they're like, yeah, something wrong with you because of what that person did. You think everybody is like that. Did you have any people that you kind of like ran off?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I probably, if you talk to them, I'm sure they probably would say my behavior affected them because my behavior is going to be off. Mm-hmm. You know, I was traumatized. But I would say for my specific situation, I push people more away than the reverse.
Right.
And the reason being is because, again, I was dealing with the embarrassment, the humiliation, and the shame, not only from the situation, but in my particular situation. Remember, I don't know if you remember when I was talking to Jane earlier, I told you that he went and put out lies in the public to cover his actions. And people gravitated towards that lie. And there was nothing I could do. So I had the shame and humiliation and embarrassment of being in the DV, but then also I was having to battle his lies. I mean, it was so bad. It sent me in such a dark depression. I actually thought about suicide. You know, I did. I'm just keeping it 100% real. I didn't want to die. I wasn't going to do anything, but those thoughts did cross my mind when you are in such a dark place. Yeah.
When you were in that dark place, what got you out of it?
Will. I still had a will to live. I still felt my commitment to my sons was stronger than anything. And then, of course, my faith in God. It was a little tested because I'm like, why would you let me do that? You know, go through that or whatever. But again, accountability and responsibility. If I had done the upfront work to have a healthy esteem, I would have never been with somebody like that.
Hindsight is 20/20.
And it's always 20/20.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so he allowed me to go along a healing path that gently showed me that where I was wrong and where I needed healing and deliverance myself, but then also where my abuser was wrong. So being able to shift and put the blame where it actually belonged helped a lot too.
I also feel like in any situation, you can control what you can control, which is normally only yourself with anybody. And how you react to things and what you deal with and what you don't deal with. You may not ever be able to fix your abuser. You can only control yourself. And so with that being the only thing that you actually have control over, I think, you know, we should focus on that more. Sometimes we don't want our abuser to be the way they are, but pray for them and keep it moving because there's no telling. You may even be on a path to understanding, you know, well, this is why I was with this guy. This is why I did this. This is why I accepted that. But they may not be on that same path. Right. And so with that, you can only, you're accountable for yourself. And some accountability is okay, but it doesn't mean that what they did was okay either. Even in forgiving them, you know, forgiveness doesn't come with amnesia. But when you're able to forgive, that doesn't mean you still have to deal with that person. You still have to be in a relationship with that person, especially if they're not repentant and trying to change the way they are. And I think a lot of that comes with just understanding that self-love, focusing on self, understanding what can I do different? What could I have done different? How could I have made a different decision to not be here, you know, even though you didn't do it intentionally, but to learn from it. Absolutely. I think that's a great thing for people to consider.
And value yourself.
Yes.
You know, a lot of times we get into those situations because we don't have value. Right. You know, you call it self-love and everything too, but I'm talking about that specific thing within self-love, which is value. When we don't think that we have something to give, that God didn't give us gifts that our presence is not needed, you know, that we're not valued by others or whatever, then that's when we put ourselves in a situation where we can be played like that, you know what I mean? That we can run into other people who will support that negative thought that we have in our mind about who we are. But when we realize, no, you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood too, a peculiar people set apart to be here to do a work. There's value in you. God created you for a reason, for a purpose. You have life to give. It might not be that cycle or that circle of people, because you're attracting the wrong people and you're in a healthy state. But there's a whole healthy state of people over here that are waiting for you to come and be your best you. And they're going to get things from you, glean things from you, and you're going to add and leave a legacy here as well. When we shift, Bishop Blake's, R.C. Blake's, I watch him all the time, he calls it queen consciousness. When we shift from this consciousness to queen consciousness and understand our value and our worth, then we can move our life forward in the way that it was originally intended to go.
I think her name was Nona Jones. I think she's a preacher. She also made a statement, which I felt was very profound. She said, if God said he knew you before he formed you,
In your mother's womb?
yeah, then how dare we at all ever let someone else who doesn't have a heaven or hell to put us in tell us anything different?
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, even in conception, every sperm doesn't get an egg.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, you know what I mean? And so it's like, if you were the one that was chosen to come forth, you know, don't let anybody else tell you anything different that you're not worth, because obviously you're here.
Or treat you any different.
Or treat you any different, yeah. Because they're not your creator. They're not your redeemer or anything. So I thought that was a really, profound statement. So, so you end up getting your divorce, and does life just go on peachy after that?
No, that's that period of time where I was telling you I had to do the work. I had to go through the hard times. It actually became so much worse because I was then dealing with the depression and the fallout from my trauma, the residue of it. And when you don't recognize it and deal with it, it gets worse, because then you continue to draw unhealthy people to you, or unhealthy situations. Your mind is still in that unhealthy filter. So I went for years battling that.
So what would help one recognize? What would help them be more aware? Because, I mean, without awareness, you can't, if somebody doesn't know they're doing something wrong, they can't fix it. So what helped you recognize?
I mean, I just knew. I mean, most of the time we know. You know, emotionally you don't feel well. You know, you're not happy every day. Somehow I'm singing in the rain. You're not doing that, you know. So we can tell when our emotions are off. If you're constantly getting angry, or if you come home getting in the bed, you know, if you're overeating, like I ate food. Food was my comfort. I mean, when I wasn't even hungry, I was eating, and I blew up to almost 300 pounds. Because food became my comfort. When you start seeing those type of things happen in your life, it's a kind of telltale sign of saying, okay, wait a minute, something's happened to you, that you might be in an unhealthy state, and you may need to reach out and get some assistance.
I've seen a statistic that said, and I really believe it's true, even with myself, that most overweight situations come from a trauma.
Oh, I know it for sure.
Yeah, it builds up to something else where you don't really see, this started back here when this trauma happened. It slowly builds, but most of it comes from that.
Yeah, to answer your question, usually there's things in our lives that we just need to step back and say, you know what, it's okay. It's okay if I'm unhealthy. That's what it took for me.
Right.
Being able to say, I'm a step out, no matter what people are saying about me, no matter about the embarrassment, the humiliation, the shame, or whatever, what happened to me, maybe I had some contribution to it because I didn't go into it making the right decisions, but at the end of the day, that person didn't have the right to abuse me. Okay, they didn't, exactly. And it's okay for me to say right now, I need help.
I think that's the hardest part too.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's what makes this podcast good, because people knowing that speaking up and speaking out is it's liberating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Because it wasn't then, until then, that I was able to start turning my life around.
Yeah.
A lot of people say, I never knew you went through domestic violence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But that's what happens.
It's a wonderful story to hear. I hope it encourages others to come forth, to seek help, and even those that may be in something now to just know that there's an other side to it. You know, you don't have to survive and live there. Yeah, strive to get to the other side.
Well, Renita, thank you so much for being my co-host today. I appreciate you so much to be able to sit and talk with you and just get the story out to raise awareness for October for domestic violence. Not just October. I mean, everybody wear your purple in October, but remember that 365 days a year, there's somebody experiencing it somewhere, not only women, but also children, also men, and we need to stop the violence for real. So thank you so much for tuning in today. If you are in need of assistance, we will drop some information in the links below for you to reach out to the respective National Domestic Violence Center, the Artemis Center, and the different places where you can get help. And let us know that we'll be praying for you, and we believe that there is hope for you on the other side. Thank you so much for tuning in today.